Blessings and peace, and welcome to the Ice Turner Experience. Today I want to touch on masculine legacy. And what are the keys and the principles of establishing that legacy? What do you think some of the requirements that are needed for that to take place? Well, first and foremost, beyond, focus, drive, and discipline, you need to be willing to sacrifice something comfortable for something uncomfortable for a moment or a season in order to get to a place to where as though you don't have to ask anything from anyone. Something that you can pass on to your children. See, that's the mark of man, is how he thinks about his children's children, especially if he doesn't have any. Yes, indeed, it's about what you're willing to sacrifice and your commitment to it, and not wavering from that line. And the key to keeping you not from wavering is to remember why you did it in the first place. I could say, for me, around this time last year, I gave up something comfortable to take a step back and live uncomfortable to build something. I do have companies in my name that I'm working on, and that's been an up and down process. But through that up and down process, what it's taught me is mental and emotional, psychological, and spiritual stability. A lot of people think that achieving certain things, it's a straight line. No, it's very gloomy at times. It's very confusing and murky at times. This is where your inner man is developed through that process. You develop iron in your stomach. It's like the story with the 4 leopards, where they were in a particular space where they were in enemy ground, and they all said to themselves and to each other, if we go back, we'll die. If we stay here, we'll die. But if we move forward and run into the kings, they might spare us the mercy on our lives. See, what these four lepers did is that they moved forward afraid. And Yah took care of their potential adversaries in the process. See, the things that we fear that might happen actually don't even happen 90% of the time. See, your manhood is determined by these things. How you deal with the false evidence appearing real. How you manage to overstep your infirmities and fragility. Like Yahshua walking on water. See, Peter was symbolic to man in a ways that he is willing. His spirit is willing to do a thing, but his fleshly understanding, because he's seen himself as flesh and not seeing himself as spirit, as a divine man, he was unable to walk onto that water. He was unable to walk over his fears in his conscious state of mind. And that is the very thing that develops the masculine potency inside of you, is moving forward and creating something. It's one thing to provide, income. It's another thing to provide income, a way of life, and a lifestyle. And rituals. The difference between a successful person and an unsuccessful person is that successful people have rituals. Successful people do the same thing daily, what unsuccessful people do occasionally. It's not about looking at what's in your hand in the moment. It's about looking at what's in your heart and what's in your belief. That's why it says in Holy Scriptures to write down the vision, to make it plain. So you can run with it. See, an examined life is one that is documented. The other thing is that you want to speak life into your life, into existence. Some people like to say, speaking in front of other people's. I personally don't like to do that. I speak it loud to myself. I speak it loud in my quiet time talking to God. Someone that is close to me I'll convey that to, because we're all touching and agreeing on certain things. If you look at the Jesus principle between the 60, the 12, and the 3, he's actually teaching you how to socialize, because the 60 is symbolic to associates. The 12 affiliates, and the 3 the friends. Now with the associates, or with the strangers, really associates, just strangers that that are not potential adversaries yet. You're really just having water cooler conversations. You necessarily don't have to tell them your plans. You don't know what they do behind the scenes to deter you from your plans. The 12, it's still, you know, light chit chat, you know, goes from the water cooler to maybe a cup of coffee and talking about service things. The 3 is symbolic to people that you can trust with your vulnerability. And that's one of the harder things as a man, especially in this day and age, is to really have that type of support. You know, people that support you in your moment of weakness. And as you see with the Jesus, in his moment of weakness, he revealed certain things. That's the reason why Peter was so close to him. It's the reason why he's seen himself in Peter. A lot of people don't even realize that Jesus, I like to say Yoshia because there was no J's back then, but I'm going to say it in a way that you understand so we can move forward. He was actually an introvert. If you look at the presence, see, studying the presence of Jesus is just as significant as studying his principles. His presence, you see, he spent a lot of time in solitude, spent a lot of time in prayer, spent a lot of time alone to recharge his battery in order to deal with the people. Because he was legacy minded. See, men that are legacy minded are more so focused on the results and the impact. You know, my grandfather had passed a couple of years ago. What I noticed is how many people were at his funeral, how many people spoke of the same things that I thought of him. Now, he was a little bit more raw with me than with others because, you know, he was a man of God, and he was a man from the neighborhood. You get what I mean? So he was stand up in both principles, right? he was always someone that told me to always face the things that you fear. And if you have to, actually, no, you must do it afraid. If you are scared. I only had one granddaughter. That's the way I like to keep it. And that's another thing to think about. How many people will be at your funeral? Now, they had his funeral at a big cathedral. You know, it was packed. You would think you were at a concert. There were people outside of the building, sitting on chairs, listening to the intercom. That was something that resonated deep within me. Realizing how many lives that my grandfather touched, not just his children's children, but other people's children, other men. How he uplifted and inspired women. Certain things he said to me that still stick with me to this day. He said, no matter how wild and rebellious you are, I'm not going to give up on you. I know the man that you're going to become. Even if you don't see it right now. My day of visiting him in the hospital, and he was sick, and the cancer was really eating on to the point that this is a man that worked until he was 73 years old. He's a welder. You could see him in pain. I mean, the guy basically had a missing toe from cutting the grass. Just a solid man. I remember him being sick in that bed and actually getting up from that bed just to give me a hug. And I'm feeling, I seen the spirit in him that was like, almost like invigorated. Rejuvenated and just excited. He passed his mantle on me. And he was at a hospital that I was working at the time. And I remember putting him into the wheelchair, just taking a stroll with him and talking, and he just seen how many people that knew me, and it felt good, man. He passed his mantle to me, and I told him, that I love him, and he told me, he was just proud of me. He's proud of the man that I'm becoming. Because a few years before that, I've really made the conscious effort to turn my life around. And it was a struggle. You're used to certain things being a certain way and having things in a much quicker fashion. It's difficult. But I wanted a better future for myself. I wanted a brighter future for myself. I wanted something to pass along. And I made those strong attempts. I wasn't necessarily a student per se. I was a studied individual. Always liked to read, always liked to write. Enjoyed learning about science. Wasn't really too good at math, but I had to train myself to becoming a student. Because I could become a student, at my own leisure, looking at things that, I'm interested in, but, having to study things that really are futile to me in order to get a piece of paper to say that I had the discipline. It takes a lot for me, but I wanted to do better. I wanted to add something, to my life that is significant. And he's seen that. He passed his mantle on to me. And I had told him that I'm gonna visit him again. I'm gonna see him, tomorrow when I get out of work. I was just happy to see my grandfather in good spirits, and I was a little bit more than midway through my shift, and I was excited to drive up to West Philly to see him, and I decided to check, social media, and my girl cousin said, heaven has gained another angel. And I didn't get a chance to see him. The man that had a strong influence on my life. The man that taught me a lot of what I know now about what it takes to be a man. And really one of the only people that seen good in me in spite of my behavior. It's gone just like that. But the way of life that he demonstrated in front of me, the discipline to do something, to maintain something, to obtain something, was instilled into me. The concentration into accomplishing a task was something that is instilled into me, was imparted. mind to look at what's in my mind and what's in my heart versus what's in my hands to get things done was instilled into me. So in a lot of ways, his spirit, his legacy lives with me. See, when I create content, I have these things in mind. When I handle the affairs of my life, professional or personal, I have this in mind. Powerful lesson that I learned was at that funeral. And that's the reason why Solomon said you should be attending more funerals than weddings. It's either you're going to be a contributor to the problem of what's going on, or you're going to be the contributor of the solution of what will take place. Beyond the colloquials. It's beyond the religiosity. As my comrade, Man Cave, said, what you do in your flesh, so is your spirit. What you sow in your flesh is what you're really sowing into your spirit. This is your health. It's not so much what you've done for yourself and how you might have made yourself a success in your manhood or in your vocation, but how have you helped other men to be successful in their manhood and in their vocation? What's your material? What are you building? Now, are you showing, other men on how to lead as men? Are you leading other men into becoming better men? Or are you causing them to regress in your demonstration? Another man that stuck out to me, which makes sense to me now more than it did back then was my old head Jimmy. Now he laced me with both. He laced me with the game. That was one person, and he also laced me with as far as being instant with studying scripture. He'd always bring scripture to me. He'd always to matter break things down. I wanted the game at the time. I was young. I was like 19. I wanted to listen to the other stuff, but now I understand. And he used to always check me about certain things. I would always want to share my war stories, just like how guys do now. They share about what they had going on in a Tinder app, exploiting young women and stuff like that, And at the time, I was pretty much dealing with the same women that professional athletes were dealing with. Certain artists, recording artists, we're dealing with, on top of high-ranking professional women, beautiful women. I wanted to brag about these exploits, like I gotta be something. But see, my old head checked me about that. Said, save those war stories for yourself. Say that. Don't bring that over here. We're gonna talk. We're gonna talk like men. And I was like, man, I was pissed. Like, what you mean? Like, got this going on, but see, the thing is, what he was checking. See, when guys do certain things like that. See, when I was young, I didn't realize that I'm doing all this stuff. I'm bragging about this stuff because I'm looking for outside validation. But he was showing me what was important was really there's only two people that need to validate you. It's God and yourself. So you haven't validated yourself yet, and you haven't seeked the one that created you to understand why he validated you. See, those that have it don't really talk about it. Those that really do it don't really discuss it. There's a couple other people I can talk about that have helped shape my life, because I'm really just a sum total of their influences, a sum total of their legacy. As a man thinketh in his mind and heart, so is he. What kind of legacy?